Okay, so I'm here with Pedro Harris, Dr. Pedro Harris. Thanks for joining me, Pedro. Perhaps you'd like to, we're going to do a little bit of a case study about my coaching program and what it's meant for Pedro. So perhaps you could introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay. Thanks, Caroline. My name is Pedro. I'm a consultant. I used to work for the New South Wales state government for about 30 years until the end of last year, where I made some radical changes. And I'll talk about that through the coaching experience that I've had with Caroline.
Cool. So we worked together for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And what was it that first brought you to me? Why did you want coaching? What was the frustration, or what did you want to achieve that had you seek me out?
Look, when we first started coaching 2.5 years ago, I was about 2 years in a role in the centre of government. Previous to that, I was as a portfolio CIO, Chief Information Officer, running a whole range of government portfolio projects. I came into the centre, and life at the centre was different. A lot more policy work, a lot more coordination with agencies. And while I was a gun IT lead, I found that I needed coaching in terms of the broader agenda and the reform that I need to put in place. So the areas where I found I needed coaching in particular that really started to highlight that for me, we had two areas. We had the IT delivery area, which I ran, and we had another area adjacent to us, which was the IT policy area. Mm-hmm. And certainly there was a new government that had just come into power. They went to the second term of the agenda, and they wanted to drive this reform much faster. The IT policy folk certainly could communicate a lot easier with the government, but their ideas and their projects were all flaky. Whereas we are a lot more
I like the technical term, flaky. It's good.
Yeah. When they had great ideas, and for example, the cloud was a panacea to everything, and we knew that hybrid cloud was the way because we had underinvested in the previous government, and it was going to take many years to redress some of those challenges. And so what I needed was to be able to communicate to the minister, the government, and also to communicate with my policy peers. So they were talking a totally different lingo, genre, and language. And that was the start of coaching for me at that point in time. Yeah.
So what's been the biggest impact for you of the coaching, both professionally and personally?
Look, I think in so many different ways. The biggest thing for me is that coaching has helped me to improve in an area of critical thinking. And I think that is, if I look at one thing, and I thought about that today, critical thinking was the thing that I took out of it. It broadened my approach to problem solving by becoming inquisitive. I remember earlier in the piece, you said to me, become inquisitive. I had a sort of ability to find solutions to some really complex problems, but do it very quickly. Mm. And with that, in a sense, came judgment as well. I would make some very clear ideas that I knew the answers. And your coaching helped me to ask questions and to think more broadly and to be inquisitive and, to hold off forming an opinion till I knew a lot more of the facts. And I found that as I became more inquisitive, there was always more things to discover. But it made me a lot easier, and it kind of made me a lot more likable by my peers because, to ask questions means you're showing interest in what they had to say and what they wanted to do. And rather than being an opponent, we found weaknesses or we found gaps in what they were presenting, and it made the policies much stronger. So I think that's been the key thing, if I put it as one thing, but there's been a lot of other things as well, such as the ability to run crucial conversations. I would resort to email, and I found that for me was
because that works.
well, except I couldn't tell emotions, right? And that's something that we had to learn, I had to learn how do I actually run a crucial conversation and get out of it, and the use of I-certs messages. So the second thing I found out of it, besides critical thinking, was a whole range of tools, a toolbox now that I now had at my disposal, how to live above the line, below the line, to know when people were living below the line, what to look for in what they were saying, the excuses, the blames, the denial, how to turn it around, and how, to get them to leave accepting responsibility and to move going forward. So I think for me, the key thing was critical thinking, and the second part of it was this bunch of tools that I picked up. The most striking aha moment I had was when you asked me to read Clayton's book.
Clayton Christensen.
Yeah, and he spoke about how to measure your life. And this book is really about relationships. And if I look back at at my work and the way I was wired at the time, my work lifestyle balance was not necessarily the best. And it was really about looking at what really matters. Enduring relationships and friendships were the key things, and I needed to address that. So I think the coaching brought some huge benefits to my family, besides just my peers that I worked with as well.
Yeah. So, because since we finished coaching late last year, what have you gone and done?
Oh, look, I left my job. So that was very
after having a huge impact on the New South Wales government, can I say? You did a lot of extraordinary projects.
Look, I thought one of the things you constantly ask me is that, when we did the passion test, what do you really want in life? And I had to really grapple with, was I looking for influence? Or was I looking for significance? Was I looking for financial rewards? Or what was driving me?
Yeah.
And I found that, I'm certainly am still driven in terms of a very strong social justice. And the changes that I made at that point in time, why I left government, I was passed over for promotion. And the good thing that actually it did do, it allowed me to make a decision. And that decision was, how do I still bring influence? So I can bring influence if I work in government. I can bring influence if I work outside of government. And I found the level of influence hasn't diminished. Having left government now, I'm still playing a role to drive policy in the areas that I really strongly believe in. So, that's been a huge sort of impact upon my life. And if I look at how that all came about, and the tools I had to use to make that decision, critical thinking, running crucial conversations with my secretary, holding to account on, things that he had promised or said he was going to do, which he didn't do. And then I had to examine myself, was I going to live above the line or below the line? Was I going to operate out of blame? I had to go through the 5 stages of grief, by the way.
Yeah,
and that was tough,
Yeah, any big change, you're going to have that.
Yeah, but I got to acceptance very quickly. It took me a couple of weeks to get to acceptance, where I knew that, I needed to maybe bring some changes in my own life. But I planned it. So I didn't just resign because I was frustrated. I worked with my secretary over several months, a way to disengage properly, and work with him to bring on board a replacement who could work inside it. So those were fundamental things that happened. I think Clayton's book really helped drive that whole lifestyle balance. And it really just brought me back to the center of what it is I want to do. One of the things I did do, while I spent 30 years working in the public sector, I went to spend 5 months in the private sector. And we saw that government was promoting people from banking with huge banking experience. And I had an opportunity to go to work for a large investment bank. And they were looking for people with government experience. Isn't it funny that those in government were looking for those in the private sector, but here they were looking for people that actually understand broad-based complex policy, and they were looking at transactions to run for 30 to 40 years, and who best but to go and get somebody inside government. So it gave me some insight to how the financial sector operates and work as well. And so I've done that for 5 months, and it's no different. It's just a different context, working just in a different environment. So I think and
still driving the vision, delivering on the projects, and having a huge impact.
Absolutely. And I think now that I've finished that, there's a lot more opportunities for me to work in the private sector. But I'm still leaning towards social justice reform, and I'm seeing so much potential and opportunity in working with my peers across government to really bring about transformative government, and we so need it.
So cool. So let's focus in on you. What have been the results for you out of the coaching and the decisions that you've made from the skills that you've learned?
Well, the biggest result is having resigned from a well-paid role and just started to go consulting and see what doors open up for me. And tremendous doors open for me. And I think the area where I'm used a lot more now is an area in critical thinking. I've got a investment assurance practice, which really looks at complex programs, and it looks to see how it's going. It's health checks, it's assurance work, and it's about understanding, are these things going to deliver? What will the investors want from it? So it's critical thinking all the way.
Right.
And it's doing.
Sorry, and I was going to say, and now that you've left, are you paid less? Are you working longer hours, or how's the shift impacted your work-life balance?
Look, I wanted to do a couple of things as I left. I wanted to go back to research and do some postdoctoral work, which I have done. So I've joined UTS and I'm an associate at UTS. So that's positive, and I'm, driving through some of those ideas.
So you're focused on your passions again. Great.
Absolutely, on my
Yeah.
passions. Financially, I'm better off. I just work 3 days and I earn as much as what I used to earn before. I choose when I want to work. For today, for instance, I'm working at night because it's going to make more sense for me to write this report. So I got much better choice and balance of my time. So money has improved. So I'm enjoying the fact that there's additional income that's coming in, which I never had before. I've got potential now to write some things off differently. And, as an employee, you only got so much you can do with your taxes. Running your own business, you can do a lot more. So there's been some more new doors that open in that area. The thing I found the greatest with the role I've got now is a choice I have. That I'm choosing assignments where I want to work. And typically when I was in the center, we would work across a whole range of different things. Whereas now I'm working with education and we're looking at how we can make, communities a lot different by bringing digital disruption to schools and work in that area. And I'm choosing. And there's other departments I can work in, but I've chosen to work in the education department for the season. So
that's
I've got
fantastic.
choice. I've got a choice.
Yeah. So how has the tools that you learned through the coaching and the communication and leadership skills that we worked on, how has that actually enabled you to create this role where you have so much choice and all the financial freedom and rewards that you've wanted?
Look, I think the biggest thing for me is being a better communicator now. I think, as I work with secretaries, as I work with ministers, as I have previously with the Expenditure Review Committee, they become very familiar and acquainted with the way I work. And if there's a huge problem that can be solved, I will find a way to solve it, but do it in such a way that to bring people along the journey. So that's kind of working a lot more now. And I'm finding I'm getting called in to deal with these more strategic projects that are quite risky. And, there's times when we got to kill it or stop it. There are other times we may have to replenish it or reset that. And you can do that in a way, or I can do it now in a way that I couldn't do before, which is really by the art of how do I actually communicate that? How do I have those tough conversations about a project or a leader on the project that's not performing, and we've got to reset that and do it, to get the outcome. So I'm finding those choices of roles are becoming a lot easier to pick, and they're coming to me now.
Yep, I almost told you they'd come
complex.
knocking on your door.
You did say that to me, and I didn't believe you at first.
Yeah. Tell me, just in terms of, the journey that it's been for coaching, what might have prevented you from following through? Because you could have stayed in a pretty cushy job in government, and you could have just played the safe game. What could have gotten in the way?
Look, I think 3 things there. I think, being too busy. I think busyness, you can actually create a whole sense of business around you that can actually stop you from doing some of the key things. So that was one thing. The second thing for me was insecurities. I had lots of those to overcome. And, this was an area of stepping outside of my comfort area and maybe having a conversation, a crucial conversation with a very senior person. I would avoid that before. And, just feeling that you can do that without being defensive. And there's ways you can actually get the outcome, without bringing judgment. So I think those 2 things are some key things. The third one I found was I was more suited to government, right, at the time. And I thought private sector was going to be a bit of a stretch. People said you've been in government for far too long. But, and I look back now at working in the top end of the financial market. This is the investment banking area, and holding my own and finding that they want me on the boards and there's so much work I can do. And I'm deciding not to take on that work. So, these are some things in the past that would have prevented me, which is really just fear, insecurities mainly. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And now you can get out of your own way and actually just explore the possibilities, right?
Absolutely. And become curious, So
yeah. That's good.
Inquisitive, yeah.
Yeah. So what's been your favorite part of working through the coaching with me?
There's many, but I think, you constantly hold me accountable and you challenge me. And so those like the 2 things that sort of at the top of my tree of working with you. Then I think...
And it was horrible, wasn't it?
No, it was fun. I think also having someone, who's your best friend in a way that can keep your best interests at heart, when they're coaching. So even when we were having some crucial conversations about maybe some perceived behavior that I wasn't dealing with, you know. I had to go to an element of trust, and how do I grow through it, knowing that you're not going to smash me through it. You really wanted me to
hopefully
go
you felt
through it.
safe.
No, I did. I always did.
I know.
Yeah, but I mean, that's been part of working with you. You made me feel safe, right?
So, Pedro, who would you recommend this coaching program to? Who would benefit the most?
Caroline, I've really recommended various people who I thought had value, and these were sort of very senior folk. I'm seeing CIOs, I'm seeing infrastructure directors, I'm seeing program sponsors who can benefit from coaching. And why am I seeing those roles in particular? Mainly because they exert so much influence across the area. We'll give them some basic tools, both in terms of how do they build and develop high-performing teams, but more importantly also about how they actually themselves get a work-lifestyle balance and bring about a broader reform both in their work life and their personal life. So I would say I would go after CIOs, directors IT, project sponsors galore. It's that class of people I would see who have the ability to bring lasting reforms through their work.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today and your willingness just to talk about the coaching that we've done together. It's been awesome. And if you're interested in finding out more about coaching with me and having the kind of experience that Pedro's had, please just click on the link below or email me at caroline@quantumvalues.com.